Chapter 17-18. Cough, 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 cough. The Conquest King spurted out blood as he looked at the ghastly wound on his chest. A weak smile appeared on his coarse face as he propped himself on the ground with his great sword to prevent himself from falling. He could not help but lament, "I'm destined to have no fate with the Holy Grail. My dream of conquering the world once again will go down the drain." However, immediately following that, the Conquest King's voice rose several times as all the magic power in his body erupted. The void began to change at an accelerated rate as the area turned into a desert without any warning. So. A cold wind suddenly blew in the pitch-black night sky. The world before his eyes suddenly became much brighter. Large amounts of yellow sand were mixed in with the strong winds that brushed past his shoulders. Is this an inherent enchantment? If I recall correctly, it's called the King's Army. This formation is truly extraordinary. As expected of the invincible army that swept through Europe, Asia, and Africa in the past. Dustless nodded his head in praise. The world before his eyes changed as time and space changed. He had arrived at an unfamiliar world. The formation of the world before him was even more exaggerated. There were densely packed figures that were as numerous as locusts. All of them were prostrating on the ground. It was a spectacular sight. Furthermore, all of them were kneeling on one knee as they looked at the Conquest King with deep respect. The soldiers had no regrets in their eyes as they stared death in the face. It was a shock that came from the depths of one's soul. Huff, 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 sand danced in the air as he stepped on the barren desert. Dustless was filled with many emotions. The Conquest King's attitude of being as high as the heavens was truly admirable. The sand danced in the air as it was formed from the corpses of his enemies. You're merely a withered willow, yet you're still able to display the scene of a hegemon that leaves one in awe. There's no harm in admitting that you're one of the few kings. Dustless spoke frankly as he looked at the army with indifference. His magnanimous eyes showed no fear. Victory or defeat will be decided here. The Conquest King rode on a black steed with a shiny mane as he endured the intense pain in his abdomen. He used all his strength to raise the long sword that represented an all-army attack. The enemy is a transcendent being from the universe. He's worlds apart from us mere mortals. But even so, I want him to witness the bravery of my army. Following that, the Conquest King raised his long sword and slashed down. The sword was pointed at Dustless as the deathly still desert began to tremble. Ow, 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 ow. The deafening roar deafened everyone. It was like an earthquake. Visible cracks appeared in the desert and gradually spread out. Boom, boom, boom. The Conquest King and his army charged forward, leaving a mess wherever they went. Due to the terrifying commotion caused by the countless people charging forward, even the desert caved in an exaggerated manner. Unable to withstand the pressure, the desert began to crack. Swish! Swish! Countless arrows and spears were fired at the same time, covering the entire sky. There was no way to dodge. The entire desert world was being ravaged by these arrows. Not to mention standing under the sun, even if they were to drill into the ground, they would probably be shot into a hornet's nest. Bang, bang, bang. Around Dustless, there were all kinds of arrows and spears piled up like a mountain. Enveloped in the golden light, Dustless was unable to penetrate the golden energy defensive wall, no matter how dense the attacks were. Let me show you something interesting. The golden double-faced Kansusanu tightly enveloped Dustless. Furthermore, just like Dustless himself, the double-faced Kansusanu formed the same hand seals as Dustless. Celestial obstruction quaking star. The somewhat bright void was suddenly covered by a shadow. The strange situation caused the charging army to be stunned. They all raised their heads to look into the depths of the void, including the Conquest King and his soldiers. All of them widened their eyes. The super meteorite that covered the entire army slowly descended. As far as the eye could see, there was only the barren and deathly still meteorite. The entire world had been taken over by it. No wonder this fellow dares to call himself a god. This strength is fully deserving of it. The Conquest King's lips trembled as he looked at the falling meteorite. The battle intent in his heart had completely collapsed. What a joke. Thinking back to how he had been so lawlessly rejoicing in his victory over Dushless, a self-mocking smile appeared on the Conquest King's face. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. This was too embarrassing. Boom. 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 As the meteorite slowly descended, the Conquest King's army suffered a heavy blow. Not only did the army suffer heavy losses, the entire desert world was mercilessly attacked. The meteorite summoned by Dushless had turned it upside down. The conventional astroseismometer was only 2 meteorites, but this time, in order to express his respect for the Conquest King, Dustless had summoned dozens of meteorites. The super meteorites that fell to the ground smashed the desert into smithereens. Caw caw caw. With a few crisp sounds, the inherent barrier that the Conquest King had painstakingly constructed shattered like a mirror, returning him to the dark starry sky from before. As for the Conquest King himself, he had long disappeared. He had been buried by the astroseismometer. The Conquest King is also dead. If that's the case, the Holy Grail can appear. Dustless's body landed on the ground as he lowered his head in contemplation. The situation in the original work was the same as it was now. Excluding himself, only Saber and Archer were left. Logically speaking, they did not meet the requirements to summon the Holy Grail, but the Holy Grail had still appeared unexpectedly. This is bad. Alice Fair is the vessel of the Holy Grail. Suddenly thinking of the most thorny problem, Dustless could not help but raise his eyebrows. Should he kill Alice Fair with his own hands? He could not do such a thing. At the same time, Alice Fair was an indispensable vessel. Let's wait for the time being. After pondering for a while, Dustless could not make up his mind. Alice Fair had treated him quite well. Both of them were flesh and blood. It was impossible and unrealistic for him to cut her off so easily. Even if he was devoured by Saber, it did not matter. After all, he was backed by the sea, and his soul was inexhaustible. Chapter 17:20. You can't even hold on anymore, yet you want me to devour your soul. Saber did not know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless's master, Alice Fair, had already fallen. As a servant, he would disappear sooner or later. What soul was there left for Saber to devour? That's not a problem. Don't worry. I'm sure you've noticed that my way of existence is a little special. I don't need magic to maintain myself. Even if my master dies, my body will not disappear. Dustless said calmly. This was the advantage of being a traveler. That does seem to be the case. You've not been using magic all this time. It's a special power that I've never seen before. Saber remained silent. To be honest, she had thought about Dustless' way of existence before. It was indeed strange and unique. He did not need to use magic at all. His attacks were also completely different from magic. The two had nothing to do with each other. Is that really okay? What if something unexpected happens? Even if you regret it, it'll be too late. Saber's tone was high, and her haggard face was solemn as she reminded him. If I die just because someone absorbed some of my soul, then I can only blame myself for being unlucky. Dustless was all smiles. His casual tone was full of confidence. Phew. I really don't understand what you're thinking. Since you've decided to do this, I won't hold back. Saber saw Dustless's determined gaze and did not want to waste any more time. Saber was not the kind of person who would waste time. Especially now that she was pressed for time, there was no time for her to hesitate. Can you guys leave first? Saber looked awkwardly at Akui and Osaka, Rin and Osaka, and her mother. Saber's voice was very soft. It was rare for her to be so shy. The weirdest thing was that Saber's face was flushed. Hey, are you trying to take advantage of her? You're using such a shameless method to help Saber recover her magic. That's despicable. A disdainful voice suddenly sounded. Dustless turned his head and saw the mischievous Rin and Osaka. She was staring at him with an ambiguous expression. Ha! Isn't it just devouring a soul? What's there to be embarrassed about? Besides, we're all heroic spirits, so there's no need to be so alarmed. Dustless didn't even think about it and asked without hesitation, also, quickly put away your wretched eyes. Dustless was inwardly puzzled. Although Rin and Osaka was only a few years old, his thoughts were truly unflattering. Hee, you'll know soon enough. Rin and Osaka patted Dustless's shoulder with an expression that said, "Take care of yourself." Then, he left in high spirits. Rin and Osaka wasn't the only one who had a strange expression on his face. Even Kue and Osaka had the same expression. Did I make a mistake somewhere? Noticing that everyone was looking at him strangely, Dustless lowered his head and asked himself. His knowledge of magic was pitifully little. Even a brat like Rin Enbin knew more than him. Dustless only knew that there were two ways to recover one's mana. One was to replenish one's mana, and the other was to devour other people's souls. Bang! With a dull thud, only Dustless and Saber were left in the spacious room. Saber suddenly sat down beside Dustless. Her face was flush red, and she was abnormally shy. Is there something wrong? Saber. Seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but ask loudly, "It's just absorbing souls, it's not like..." Dustless almost blurted out the words replenishing mana, but at the crucial moment, he quickly stopped himself. Don't you know the exact process? This time, it was Saber's turn to be shocked. She stared into Dustless's eyes, her clear eyes unreadable. In a trance, she seemed to be able to see through Dustless's mind. It doesn't look like you're lying. Saber gritted her teeth and took advantage of Dustless's carelessness to push him down, her entire body lying on top of Dustless's body. Plop! Caught off guard, Dustless was pressed to the ground. He stared blankly at Saber. He didn't expect her to suddenly attack him. Staring at the red lips so close to his, he seemed to have understood something. No wonder Ling and the others made such expressions. So this is how Saber wants to absorb my soul. No wonder she's so embarrassed. Dustless suddenly understood. If he guessed correctly, Saber might be absorbing his soul through mouth-to-mouth contact. Closing her eyes, Saber endured the discomfort in her body and sealed Dustless's mouth. Soft. Tastes good. Dustless's mind was in a daze. He didn't expect Saber to counterattack. At the same time, he felt a strange force enter his body from Saber's mouth. It didn't have a physical body, and it was invisible to the touch, but it was real. It kept pulling at his mind and devouring the majestic soul in Dustless's body. This guy is really a freak. After about 10 seconds, Saber's eyes widened as she stared at Dustless, who was lying flat on the bed. At first, she was only absorbing Dustless's soul slightly, but later, she was shocked to find that the boundless soul was vast and boundless. Saber finally understood what Dustless meant when he said that no matter how much water one took from the sea, there was an endless supply. She worked harder to suck Dustless's mouth, and Saber's mana was quickly restored. Chapter 1721. The mana in Saber's body was quickly recovering, and it was increasing rapidly. Her original mana had recovered, and it even showed signs of reaching its peak. Saber's complexion also recovered, and her pale face flashed with a healthy redness. After a long time, Dustless and Saab finally parted their lips. No, you can't be a heroic spirit. You have such a terrifying soul. Even if you devoured the souls of all the humans in the world, you still wouldn't be able to reach such a level. Dustless, I'm getting more and more curious about your background. You really are an enigma, Saber. You're already a heroic spirit. Why do you care about your past life? Let go of those trivial matters. Even if you know about my background, it won't do you any good. In short, if I get the Holy Grail, I'll give it to you. Dustless moved a little and took a few deep breaths. When Saber suddenly covered his mouth just now, he almost suffocated. Is there something wrong with my ears? Are you planning to give me the Holy Grail to fulfill my wish? Saber sighed, and there was a rare hint of bitterness in her voice. Dustless, I always feel like you're hiding a lot of secrets from me. As allies, we should know each other well. TSK. How fragrant. But then again, I'm the one who's at a disadvantage. A look of infatuation flashed across Saber's face. Wu Chen's careless words made Saber embarrassed. Your attitude and appearance are a little different. However, Saber did not get angry. Instead, she pouted like a little girl and continued to complain. Compared to an ordinary woman, I prefer you to treat me like a servant. Cough, cough, cough. Hearing this, Dustless coughed twice and stared at the cheap red Saber. He couldn't help but lament, Saber, your side as a knight is very charming, but as a woman, it's also like a soul-sucking poison. Thank you for your compliment, but I really can't feel happy about it. Saber was unmoved. There was not even a ripple on her face. She was very calm. From the moment she pulled out the sword and the stone, she had forgotten that she was a woman. Now it's about time to find trouble with Gold Shinny. Dustless stood up and stretched his body. A sinister look flashed across his eyes. Golden glitter. Are you talking about Archer? After Saber was taken aback, her fair chin gently nodded a few times. She suddenly recalled the gorgeous attire of the Hero King. He was definitely worthy of the title of Golden Twinkle. At this moment, in another direction. Is this the Holy Grail? It's different from what I imagined. The Hero King and Yen Fengili stood side by side. The former looked at the golden Holy Grail in front of him with disappointment. It was embedded with all kinds of gorgeous and resplendent gems. Furthermore, a crimson liquid similar to fresh blood was flowing out of the Holy Grail. However, the Hero King and Yen Fengili's performances were mediocre. Chapter 1722. A few seconds later, Dustless and Saber also landed on the ground. As for Wei Gong Qixi, he was also on his way here. Seeing that the Holy Grail War was about to end, Wei Gong Qixi naturally did not want the Holy Grail to be taken by someone else first. Therefore, this guy forced himself to endure the bleeding wound and slowly rushed over. The two of you sure know how to put on airs. The Hero King's body shimmered as he stared at Saber, who was hugging Dustless. Unable to vent his anger, he clenched his fists and roared, regardless of what happens today, 8th heroic spirit, you must die here for this king. Why does this fellow look like he ate gunpowder? Did someone offend him? Saber frowned and looked up, only to see Archer's face as dark as a black pot. Who offended him? Of course it was. Dustless curled his lips and looked down on the petty Hero King. Even though he was known as the most ancient king, humanity's oldest super king, and looked down on all life like a god, the Hero King's attitude was truly unflattering. Upon seeing this scene, the Hero King's eyes widened. The suppressed flames in his heart could no longer remain dormant. Just as he was about to reprimand Dustless suddenly did something even more overboard. Hero King, your attitude is as puny as a worm. Dustless mocked in an eccentric manner. He looked down on the so-called most ancient king. It's not up to you to point fingers at me. Stay away from Saber. That belongs to the king." A scream that sounded like a pig being slaughtered resounded through the void. The hero king was enraged as he nearly exploded. His face was burning red as veins protruded on his forehead. "Gilgamesh seems a little off. Could it be that he has feelings for Saber? What a joke. Isn't this fellow a heroic spirit?" Yen Feng Chili looked oddly at the hero king before looking at Dustless and Saber. Suddenly, he came to a realization and could not help but pity the hero king. He sighed and said, "This is just fancy dog abuse. By agitating Archer like this, you will completely offend him." Saber was at a loss whether to laugh or cry at Dustless's thoughts. It was as though the angrier the hero king was, the happier he was. "Since we are mortal enemies, even if I don't agitate the hero king, this bastard will still kill us all." This was the Holy Grail War. Only one saint would be enough. Everyone else could just die. This is called a psychological blow. Look at how the bastard, the hero king, is stamping with rage. Who knows if that bastard will faint from the anger. When that happens, we can subdue him without a fight. Dustless laughed heartily as he ignored the hero king's constipated expression. "This guy, why is he so angry?" Saber also noticed the odd expression on the hero king's face. Immediately, she wore an odd expression. She could not figure out why this bastard was so angry. It felt like his wife had been snatched away by Dustless. "Since you wish to suffer this king's wrath so much, I'll grant you your wish." "Darn bastard!" The infuriated hero king exploded. With a wave of his hand, the void was filled with countless golden beams of light. Immediately following that, countless divine weapons appeared. Shoo! 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 A dense barrage of attacks came pouring down as cold beams filled the void. Accompanied by the hero king's rage, the number reached a level that left one in despair. "Ignorant fool, aren't you embarrassed to take out such a thing to embarrass yourself? Hurry up and pull out your EA. If you cause a huge commotion and I kill you, I'll be embarrassed." Raising his head to scan the various weapons floating above the hero king's head, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. He was unperturbed. Following that, he gently raised his right arm and flicked out a beam of light from his finger. Binding Dao's 81, space shattering. A transparent barrier instantly appeared. It was as thin as a cicada's wing, not even as thick as a fingernail. "You wish to use such a thing to resist this king's attack? Do you think I'm trash like Lancer and Berserker? This is blasphemy to this king. Bastard!" The hero king bellowed angrily. He was pissed off by Dustless's pathetic look. He even felt nauseous as he felt uncomfortable all over. "Who the hell needs your pity?" Boom! Boom! The densely packed noble artifacts all crashed onto the enchantment. The continuous attacks were like a tidal wave, constantly destroying the seemingly weak enchantment that could not withstand a single blow from the sky-severing barrier. "It won't shatter, right?" Saber was rather nervous. Once the barrier was shattered, she and Dustless would probably be riddled with holes by the enraged hero king. Boom! 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 The barrage of attacks continued. There were more than 1,000 treasures that shot out from the Gate of Babylon, but what was shocking was that no matter how many attacks they launched, they failed to tear apart Dustless's space-shattering barrier. How boring. Didn't I say before that as long as you pull out your EA, the might will be enough to tear apart this barrier? Dustless's tone suddenly paused as he pointed at the golden treasures that littered the ground and advised, "It's best you pick up such fancy moves while it's still early." Did this darn bastard say that on purpose? The hero king was so angry that his hair stood on end. If Dustless had not said that, it would have been fine. There was nothing wrong with him taking out his EA, but now, if he were to take out his EA according to Dustless's wishes, his reputation as the Hero King would be completely ruined. Do you think I'll take it out just because you say so? You aren't worthy. The Hero King cupped his fists and snorted coldly. He waved his hand once again as the golden light above his head shot out a large number of weapons once again. With a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas, they came crashing down on Dustless and Saber. You don't appreciate my kind advice at all. Dustless could not help but shake his head when he saw the situation. He leisurely snapped his fingers and with a tpa sound, large ripples appeared in the void. It was as though they had suddenly appeared around the sun. The blinding light was scorching and blinding. Of course, Gilgamesh's face turned green. Chapter 1723. There was only one user of the King's Babylon, in the past, Hero King Gilgamesh. But now, things were different. There was a brand new user, and his proficiency and control was something even the original user, the Hero King, could not match. After all, Dustless had been using the King's Babylon for centuries. In terms of time, it far exceeded the Hero King's, so it was reasonable for his attainment to be above his. Hum. 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 Above Dustless's head, a resplendent beam of light with a domineering aura flashed. It was roughly the same as the golden beam above the Hero King's head. They were suffused with an ancient and desolate aura. Today, I'll finish you off completely, you imposter. Dustless's thin arm waved gently as all sorts of enviable treasures surged out. Without exception, they were all peerless divine artifacts. Darn bastard, you are clearly the imposter, yet you are slandering me. The Hero King flew into a rage when he heard this. He was the most ancient king. Back when there was only one world, one person had once obtained all the treasures in the world. Everything in the world belonged to this king. He was the Hero King of ancient Uruk, Gilgamesh. Now, as the true Hero King, Gilgamesh felt aggrieved when Dustless accused him of being an imposter. These two bastards, Saber was abnormally speechless. The Hero King had a large number of treasures above his head, and so did Dustless. There were all sorts of treasures that left people dazzled, envious, and hateful. Ignoring others, even Saber herself felt jealous. Dustless and the Hero King could even take out the original form of Excalibur. The one who suffered the greatest blow from this clash was not the Hero King, but Saber. Watching the two tycoons battle and seeing them take out all sorts of legendary treasures made her feel sad. Crush him. Disappear, you eyesore of gold. Dustless and the Hero King waved their hands at the same time as the large number of treasures gathered on their foreheads shot out without leaving a single one behind. Boom. 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 High up in the sky, hundreds of treasures began to clash. The scene was spectacular as resplendent sparks flashed incessantly. Both sides destroyed each other's treasures as the ground was filled with metal debris. What kind of joke is this? Why would I lose to such an imposter? The Hero King stared intently at the debris on the ground as he looked at the indifferent Dustless. He revealed a look of shock. Shoo! Shoo! Their treasured artifacts continued clashing, but anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Dustless was superior. Compared to the Hero King who was aimlessly venting the flames in his heart, Dustless's usage was much more ingenious. Shoo shoo! The treasure artifact that the Hero King shot out from the king's treasure was once again shattered by the treasure artifact under Dustless's control, reducing it to metal scraps that filled the ground. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Shoo! No one would be able to accept losing to a person he hated the most in a domain he was best at. It was absolutely intolerable, much less the Hero King who thought highly of himself. Heavenlock! Shoo! 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 A strange-looking chain drilled out of the void as it dodged the oncoming treasures. Like a venomous snake, it went straight for Dustless. If you are caught by Heavenlock, you are definitely dead. The Hero King's blood-red eyes churned with bloodlust as his face suffused a ruthless and ferocious look. He made up his mind that the moment he captured Wuchen, he would immediately brandish his saber to finish off the eyesore. Shoo! 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 Is this guy going easy on me? Does he think I'm not his match? Not only did the Hero King not rejoice when he saw this, his eyebrows pricked up as he wondered, is this guy doing this on purpose? Is he looking down on me? Compared to EA, I actually trust Heavenlock more. Caw caw caw. Just as he planned on continuing his verbal assault on Dustless, the Hero King was smacked in the face. He felt a burning pain as a crack appeared in the heavenly lock that could not be unlocked. Even the god of Heavenlock can't break free. Don't be so full of yourself. No matter what kind of attack it is, it has a limit. If it exceeds that limit, then any wonderful move will collapse on its own. The heavenly lock actually shattered. How is this possible? The heavenly lock is used as a divine rule. The higher the divinity of the captive, the harder the chain will be, and the harder it will be to break free. The Hero King's face was ashen as though he had eaten a fly. It was extremely cheap and fascinating. No matter how much he thought about it, he never imagined that Dustless would be able to shatter the Heavenlock so easily. The process was as simple and easy as eating and drinking. Chapter 1724. It was no wonder the Hero King would reveal such a bitter expression. To him, the heavenly lock had always been successful. Ordinary people could only dream of escaping the heavenly lock's shackles, much less destroy it. But now, Dustless had done it. And it was so simple. Unforgivable. The Hero King was enraged as he locked his gaze onto Dustless. His blood-red eyes protruded outwards, giving off a feeling of horror that was about to burst out of his eye sockets. You don't seem to have heard what I said before. Sweeping a glance at the Hero King who was about to go berserk, Dustless knew that what he had said before was nonsense. It was best to continue fighting. Whoosh! 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 His body transformed into a formless beam of light as he instantly appeared in front of the Hero King. Heavenly Gathering Cloud Sword. Light swirled in his hand as a divine sword that could slice through metal like mud flashed. What fast speed! Turning his head, the Hero King was alarmed. Although he was unable to capture Dustless's speed, and he did not even have the time to react, his natural sense of danger and intuition had sensed the impending danger. Shoo! 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 Without a second thought, the Hero King dodged and retreated. Too slow. Dustless shot forward with his sword in hand. Like a shadow, he appeared in front of the Hero King in a split second. Under the latter's horrified gaze, the Heavenly Gathering Cloud sword swept out. Poochie! Blood splattered out of the void as a glaring mark appeared on the Hero King's gorgeous armor. The defensive armor was pulverized, and one could see the skin that had been sliced apart. How dare you, Shoo! 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 However, Dustless did not give the Hero King a chance to speak any more nonsense. The glint fruit's powers were activated once again as a straight beam of light stopped above the Hero King's forehead. No good. Seeing the flash above his head, the Hero King's pupils constricted. The space behind him produced a ripple once again as the sharp gemstone sword was unsheathed. Shoo! 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 The Hero King had an abnormally ferocious expression as he slashed at Dustless's waist. His strength was raised to the limits of his life. From the looks of it, he planned on slicing Dustless in half. Naive. Dustless's dry lips curled into a contemptuous smile. His pupils spun as his eye powers blasted out. Immediately following that, the corners of his mouth opened slightly as he spat out two simple words. Immediately, he resolved the Hero King's fatal attack. Divine might. A slight ripple of energy appeared in the sky, and a tiny vortex appeared. Dustless's abdomen throbbed inexplicably, and in an instant, it lost its substance. Poochie. The broadsword's beam penetrated Dustless's body. The Hero King was overjoyed as he stared at the wound in anticipation. He thought that it would be a beautiful scene of him being sliced in half. To everyone's surprise, the sensation that came from his hand left the Hero King in a daze. He had clearly struck Dustless's body, but the feeling he got was like a sword sweeping across invisible air. It was completely useless. Dustless's body seemed to suddenly turn incorporeal as he vanished without a trace. Lightspeed kick. Taking advantage of the Hero King's moment of carelessness, Dustless's tiny foot, which was covered in light, struck him with all its might. Boom! 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 A flaming mushroom cloud rose from the Hero King's body as he was sent flying hundreds of meters away by Dustless's kick. His shining armor lost its luster as it was charred black. Not only that, certain parts of his body could not withstand the force of the explosion as they caved in. Aw, 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 a roar that caused one's body to tremble rang out. Those who were touched by the sound wave all retreated, their hearts trembling in fear from that furious roar. Kill you. I have to kill you. I have to tear you to pieces. A neurotic and sharp roar came out of the Hero King's throat. On a closer look, his body was severely charred. His head of golden hair had been ignited by Dustless's lightspeed kick, burning him to a crisp. Since you want to die so much, I'll grant you your wish. The Hero King was completely enraged. The space around his right hand produced a ripple as a golden circle appeared. Following that, a strange-looking spiral weapon slowly emerged. Is it EA? Finally decided to get serious. Dustless nodded slightly when he saw the situation. Following that, a teasing and playful look flashed across his face. Focusing on the Hero King who was about to go berserk, Dustless suddenly shouted, Heavenlock. Shoo! 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 In the void, a series of massive chains shot out as they wantonly danced. This time, the user of the Heavenlock and the target of the attack had changed. The person who cast the spell had become Dustless, while the target of the attack had become the Hero King. It was the exact opposite of the previous outcome. Scram, you hateful thing! The Hero King roared as a large number of treasures shot out from the void behind him, destroying the Heavenlock that was attacking him. Fool! Dustless laughed sinisterly in his heart as his gaze landed on the Hero King's feet. Caw caw caw! The ground beneath his feet suddenly exploded. The Hero King, who realized the danger, retreated in a flash, but it was too late. The golden chains that had been prepared for a long time instantly captured him. The Hero King stared intently at the chains that wrapped around him. This was the first time in his life that he had a look of despair. He said helplessly, It's actually the Heavenlock. I'm screwed. As the owner of the Heavenlock, the Hero King naturally knew how terrifying the Heavenlock was. To ordinary humans, the Heavenlock was just a sturdy chain without anything special. But if the target was a god, the problem would be terrible. The Heavenlock was a weapon against gods. To put it simply, it was meant to punish gods. It was of little use against mortals. And the Hero King happened to possess 2/3 of the divine spark, so the threat the Heavenlock posed to him was absolutely fatal. Chapter 1725. Although the Hero King was powerful, he was similarly helpless against his own noble artifact. All he could do was stare helplessly at the glaring chains. Suddenly, he found the heaven lock extremely disgusting. The Hero King could not help but feel nauseous as he vomited. Hero King, although you are powerful, you do not have any immunity against your own noble artifact, right? Especially as a demigod, it's impossible for you to resist the heaven lock. Dustless chuckled in Schadenfreude. The uniqueness of the heaven lock lay in this. To gods, it was extremely lethal, but to ordinary humans, it was just an ordinary chain. And the Hero King happened to have 2/3 of the divine spark, hence, the heaven lock's restraint on him was multiplied. Damn it! Damn it! The Hero King was like a hooligan as he cursed incessantly. Looking at the chains that were tightly wrapped around his left arm, he suddenly felt a sense of mockery. His face turned purple from anger. The Hero King never dreamed that he would fall at the hands of heaven shackles. Heaven shackles were often used by the Hero King to punish others, but he never expected that Dustless would use heaven shackles to punish him. How dare he! Then I'll use the EA to tear you apart. After struggling with all his might, the Hero King helplessly realized that he had no way of escaping the heaven lock. It was as though he had met his nemesis. The greater his strength, the harder the heaven lock became. You plan on using the parting sword, DA, to tear me apart. Are you sure you can do it? Also. A deep smile flashed across Dustless's face. With a gentle wave of his right hand, a strange sword that looked identical to the parting sword, DA, in the Hero King's hand appeared in Dustless's palm. This fellow can also use the parting sword, DA. The Hero King's arrogant eyes flashed a look of caution. He knew the strength of his noble artifact like the back of his hand. If he was unlucky, he might really be reduced to ashes by the terrifying power of the parting sword, DA. After all, the parting sword, DA, was known as a sword that could destroy the world. Saber. Suddenly, Dustless looked at the distant saber and reminded her, instead of watching me battle with this shiny gold, why don't you take the opportunity to snatch the sacred grail? After being reminded by Dustless, Saber, who had been watching the battle, came back to her senses. The scene of Dustless crushing gold sparkly was so satisfying that Saber was momentarily dazed. Seeing Golden Twinkle being brutally beaten up by Dustless, especially being burned to a crisp by Dustless, with his hair charred, turning the Hero King into a bald head, Saber felt a sense of relief. Even Yen Feng, Chi-Li, was looked down upon beyond the clouds. Is it that funny? I hope the two of you can still laugh later. The Hero King's cold gaze swept back and forth. It was as bone-piercing as an icy blade. Anyone who met his tyrannical gaze would feel a prickling pain and discomfort on their skin. Have a taste of my wrath. An arrogant smile suffused the Hero King's face as he caressed, obedient parting sword, yea. He stared at Dustless in a cool and awesome manner. Instantly, he found immense confidence. Caw caw caw. The obedient parting sword began spinning rapidly as a red spiral halo burst out. The relatively calm sky immediately stirred with a biting cold wind. Not only that, the void began to crack visibly. Then, let's see who's stronger. Dustless smiled faintly when he saw this. The obedient parting sword, EA, in his hand began spinning rapidly as an extremely destructive and sharp wind wave blasted out. Enuma Elish. The Hero King, who was the first to lose his cool, launched an attack as a dense energy ripple surged over. The surrounding void was instantly obliterated. Ha ha, Hero King. You shout with such grandeur. You don't look too bad on the surface. Dustless chuckled as he looked at the incoming red vortex. Space began to slowly disintegrate. Dustless threw out, obedient parting sword, EA, in his hand. Annihilate him, AA. Compared to the sonorous and valiant Hero King, Dustless's tone was a lot more ordinary. Boom. 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 The two violent energy ripples collided, causing the void to tremble violently. The two forces that were in a stalemate struggled against each other, and the violent impact that erupted shattered the surrounding space. That's all there is to it. Looking at the deadlocked energy ripples, the Hero King suddenly laughed happily. He had always been crushed by dustless. Even a genuine Hero King like him had been called a fake. Now, he had finally regained some of his confidence. No, you've lost. Gently lifting his eyelids to glance at the Hero King, Dustless's mind stirred slightly as Celestial Lock pulled the Hero King over. He approached the area where the two obedient parting swords were clashing. Poochie! 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 Under the influence of the powerful energy ripples, the Hero King's body began to gradually collapse. This bastard plans on using the shockwaves from the obedient parting sword, EA, to finish me off. How can I let you do as you wish? The Hero King clenched his teeth as he understood Dustless's true intentions. He took the initiative to distance himself from the massive energy ripples. Just the powerful energy ripples from the clash of the two obedient parting swords, EA, was enough to vanquish the Hero King. And at that moment, a jaw-dropping turn of events happened. It disrupted the ending that was about to come to an end. Saber, I'm now using a command curse to order you to immediately give up your plans on the Holy Grail. Begin attacking that man, Dustless. Join forces with Archer to finish him off. The sudden order froze the scene as everyone stared in shock at the panting figure. Kisi, are you sick? Why would you give such a stupid order? Seeing that the Holy Grail was about to be hers, Saber's limbs immediately lost control. With her sword in hand, she turned around and slowly walked towards Dustless. Sorry Saber, there's only one Holy Grail, and it only has one owner, Wei Gong Kisi. So it's best you join forces with the Hero King to kill Dustless. The golden flash swept out and pounced straight at Gilgamesh. Quickly leave, Dustless. Saber warned him loudly. She was filled with hatred for Wei Gong Kisi. Dustless had helped her numerous times, and if not for Dustless contributing his soul to raise her demonic powers, Saber might have already vanished. Looking up, he saw Saber raise Excalibur. Furthermore, it was covered in a large amount of destructive golden light. An extremely oppressive and powerful slash enveloped Dustless. Swish! Swish! However, Dustless, who had transformed into a flash of light, ignored it. He continued charging straight for the Hero King. Boom! 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 Even though Saber did not wish to use her slash, due to the command hex's command, a massive beam of light swept out. It was about to swallow Dustless whole. Boom! 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 The golden slash tore through the thistles and thorns as it headed straight for Dustless to devour. A good opportunity. Upon seeing this, the Hero King's eyes lit up. The obedient parting sword EA, in his hand began spinning at high speeds once again. A red vortex of energy ripples burst out. What a miracle! The Hero King and the Night King, these two archenemies, actually joined forces one day. Dustless could not help but find it laughable. As everyone knew, Saber and Archer were archenemies. The two of them could be said to be natural enemies. The two of them had fought fiercely during the two Holy Grail Wars. Now, they had actually joined forces to deal with him. Dustless felt that the world was unpredictable. Both of you are famous figures in history. Then, let me be a little more serious. With his gaze focused, large amounts of chakra erupted from Dustless's body as it gathered and circulated around his body. A super monster formed completely from energy suddenly appeared. Ao. It was a monster formed from the energy in Dustless's body, but it had reached a shocking level. Under Dustless's control, it was as though it had been given life as it let out an earth-shattering roar. The deafening roar caused one's soul to tremble. Layer after layer of chakra broke out of his body and quickly fused with it. Gradually, it turned into a huge figure. It was an exaggerated monster formed completely from energy. It was like a shark that had emerged from the water, revealing its ferocious appearance. It was wearing a simple armor with a ferocious Tengu armor on its head. Its extremely evil eyes were like the embodiment of a nightmare. It emitted a powerful force that made one's heart palpitate. Its huge body was extraordinarily mighty and filled with explosive power. Not to mention a complete Kansusanu, even if it was a bug that was dozens of meters long, it would definitely cause a ruckus. Chapter 1727. What is that strange thing? The Hero King's eyes widened as his eyes darted around in shock. Buzz, a golden light covered the sky as the entire world was bathed in golden light. Looking up, a super behemoth suddenly appeared. Its exaggerated height of 100 meters left the Hero King dumbfounded. This is Dustless's true face. Sensing the ancient aura exuding from the prehistoric giant, Saber muttered to herself in a daze. Even if Wei Gong Qixi used command curse to order me and Archer to join forces, it doesn't seem like we can defeat Dustless. If that's the case, I have a clear conscience. Sensing the invincible aura of the giant that could annihilate the world, Saber wasn't disappointed or sad. Instead, she revealed a charming smile. As a knight, she abided by the ideals of knights. Dustless had done her a favor, but because of Wei Gong Qixi's orders, she had no choice but to draw her sword against Dustless. This made her feel guilty. Now that Dustless had the strength to deal with her and Archer, Saber was truly happy. Shoo! 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 At the same time, the massive golden light slammed into Kansusanu's retreating body, instantly devouring its massive leg. Boom! 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 An intense explosion suddenly spread out. Kansusanu's massive body only trembled slightly before remaining motionless. When the smoke dissipated, Kansusanu didn't even have a single wound left on it. Gulp! Seeing this scene, Saber choked in disbelief. The sharpness of Excalibur was self-evident. She knew it very well, but now that she had attacked the monster with all her might, it didn't even leave a scratch. This truly refreshed Saber's understanding. Darn pervert. The Hero King was also dumbfounded when he saw this, as he could not help but curse. Many years ago, I was already in a different dimension from the both of you. Inside the golden complete Kansusanu, Dustless looked down at the two people on the ground expressionlessly. Finally, Kansusanu's tachi of light was unsheathed. Clang! 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 The huge blade, which was more than 10 meters long, shone brightly in the sky. It was as terrifying as a guillotine. Of course, the target of this guillotine was not one or two people. It was the entire Eastern Mu world. Hero King. Now do you understand what I meant by my previous words? In front of the complete Kansusanu, all moves are weak. Under the control of his mind, Kansusanu perfect form lifted the tachi of light. Bastard, give me my holy grail. Kansusanu's perfect form's descent also shocked Wei Gong Qixi and Yen Feng Qili, especially when they saw Kansusanu's 100-meter-tall super figure. Wei Gong Qixi's heart was filled with despair. *CK, even if the two kings joined forces, they would not be a match for this monster. You want me to give you the Holy Grail? Dream on. No. You should just die, you despicable Wei Gong Qixi. Yen Feng Qili sneered coldly. In his opinion, Wei Gong Qixi was a hypocrite. He was clearly an evil wolf, so why was he pretending to be kind? He even had delusions of becoming a righteous partner. What a joke. Don't even think of stopping me from obtaining the Holy Grail. Without any hesitation, he pounced towards Wei Gong Qixi. It was impossible for him to hand over the Holy Grail. There was no room for negotiation. Yan Feng Qili also had endless doubts, hoping to get the answer from the Holy Grail. Gulp. The hero king stared at the super-huge sword in the sky with his mouth agape. He could not hide the fear in his heart as his body began to retreat uncontrollably. What kind of joke is this? It's just a scam. There's no way I'm afraid. The hero king's face flushed red with anger. At the same time, a bright light flashed behind him. An ancient flying device inlaid with gorgeous gems flew out from the Gate of Babylon. His handsome face was filled with indescribable determination. He decisively jumped onto the gorgeous flying device. From the looks of it, he wanted to fight to the death with Dustless to settle the matter. Fool who doesn't know his limits. Seeing the hero king soar into the sky without any fear, Dustless could not help but shake his head. He gently swung the perfect form Kansusanu's saber out. Shoo! 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 The massive saber blade immediately stood out as it charged straight at the hero king, who was like a king of the sky. So powerful. The hero king's eyes could not help but twitch. Even though the saber wind had yet to approach his body, he could not help but catch a glimpse of the shadow of death. To this day, Dustless's Kansusanu had already reached the pinnacle of perfection, shocking the world. Caw caw caw. The perfect form Kansusanu's might was too immense. The flying device that the hero king was controlling seemed to have lost its effectiveness. It began to wander around uncontrollably, as though it could tilt and be destroyed at any moment. Don't underestimate me. The hero king, who was feeling pissed, exploded. Obedient Parting Sword, DA, once again unleashed an extremely destructive attack. He stared at the incoming saber wind and used all his strength to shoot out the edge. Enuma, Elish. Two powerful moves, in a situation where there was no one to stop them, inevitably collided. A superstorm that wanted to destroy the world spread out. Excalibur, at the same time, Saber, who was under the control of the command curse, also launched a lethal attack at Dustless. The combined attack of Saber and the hero king was surprisingly powerful. However, as for Saber's attack, it was completely ignored by Dustless. It was not that he looked down on her, but with his present strength, the chances of him cracking the strengthened perfect form Kansusanu was 0. Therefore, Dustless naturally had nothing to worry about. Chapter 1728. Boom. 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 Saber's Excalibur struck Kansusanu's perfect form, immediately producing large amounts of smoke and dust. Blazing flames soared into the sky. So. A cold wind blew from the rift, revealing the perfect form Kansusanu's quaint and unscathed body. What a detestable evildoer. At the very least, he should have gone easy on me. At least we can be considered acquaintances. Saber gave a wry smile as he made a rare joke to amuse himself. He had been dealt a blow by the perfect form Kansusanu's indestructible defense. At the same time, the saber wind produced by the perfect form Kansusanu and the sharpness of Obedient Parting Sword, EA, made close contact. Boom! 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 The void immediately trembled as a chaotic rift spread out. It devoured the void and dismembered the world, presenting a tragic scene of doomsday. TCH, this big guy may be scary, but that's only on the surface. The hero king, who was riding on a pearlescent jewel aircraft, regained some of his shattered confidence. This time, he was not at a disadvantage in the clash between the perfect form Kansusanu and Obedient Parting Sword, EA. Are you that happy to be able to block my attack? You even forgot your identity and laughed heartily. Dustless, who was inside the perfect form Kansusanu, looked calmly at the hero king. Following that, the perfect form Kansusanoo brandished his greatsword once again. How can a mortal like you understand this king's feelings? This is obviously something to be happy about. Without even thinking, the hero king answered decisively. Up to this point in the battle, he had been crushed by Dustless. Now, he had finally turned the tables. Although it was a draw, the hero king had regained a lot of his confidence. He was grinning from ear to ear. Seeing Dustless's perfect form Kansusanoo preparing to attack once again, the hero king did not want to fall behind. He raised a obedient parting sword, EA, in his hand as well. Immortal technique, Dustless's perfect Kansusanoo's aura became dull. Originally, the Uchiha clan's Sharingan was a very evil type, and Kansusanoo gave off a very sinister and gloomy feeling. But this time, with the integration of the Senjutsu, the unique temperament suddenly changed. The complete form Kansusanoo's enormous body was right in front of his eyes, yet it felt like it was far away from him. It felt like it had blended into nature, as if it had become one with nature. Immortal technique, Kansusanoo. With Dustless's words, the perfect Kansusanoo's physique was enhanced once again. Under the hero king's incredulous gaze, it grew another 10 to 20 meters. This is too ridiculous. The hero king's lips trembled as he witnessed the enlarged perfect Kansusanoo. Immediately, he felt insulted. Dustless's perfect Kansusanoo from before was not at its peak. This meant that he had deliberately gone easy on him and was looking down on him. Darn thing. The enraged Gilgamesh could no longer tolerate it. The obedient parting sword, EA, in his hand once again pulsed with a red vortex as it gradually enlarged. Enuma, Elish. Accompanied by the hero king's rage, a powerful attack came straight at him. It was about to devour the perfect Kansusanoo. What a boring trick. Upon seeing this, Dustless shook his head slightly. Immortal technique, Kansusanoo immediately waved his hand nonchalantly. Boom! 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 A golden saber wind that was several times more terrifying than before flashed. Its might and speed were several times more powerful than before. In an instant, it tore apart the hero king's trusted attack. Puchi! The dark red energy vortexes, which were getting bigger and bigger, were instantly destroyed. It was as simple as tearing a piece of paper. They were annihilated in the blink of an eye. Cracks that were more than 10 meters deep appeared on the ground. It was extremely terrifying. The shockwaves that spread out in all directions even crushed the surrounding mountains into powder. Puchi! It was the same for the hero king himself. His entire body had been penetrated by the saber wind of Kansusanoo. His body had an additional shocking crack and gap. His entire body had nearly been split into two. I'm really sorry. I did not mean to put you in this state. It's just that I was displeased with your petty victory, so I used a little more strength. After dispelling immortal technique, Kansusanoo, Dustless's body landed on the ground. He looked apologetically at the hero king. This bastard's organs had been completely destroyed. His death was only a matter of time. Shoo! 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 However, the furious strike of immortal technique, Kansusanoo, did not stop there. It continued pressing forward, and with an unstoppable speed, it blasted towards the holy grail that Yen Feng Chili and Wei Gong Chisi were fighting over. Boom! 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 An earth-shattering explosion swept out as the exquisite holy grail was pulverized by Kansusanoo's saber wind. Not even a residue was left behind. The disgusting liquid contained in the holy grail, the evil of this world, also spread out. Indeed, it's easy for a person to do stupid things when angered. Upon seeing this, Dustless smacked his head as he felt a headache coming on. His mind had indeed been thrown into chaos by the hero king's arrogant tone. He had deliberately suppressed the power of Kansusanoo, but such a thing had still happened. No, this isn't my fault. It can only be said that this place is too small. After a moment of silence, Dustless suddenly shook his head and pushed all his faults to the back of his mind. This ending isn't bad either. Lying on the ground, the hero king's eyes were turbid. His dying tone was filled with schadenfreude. His abdomen had already been penetrated by Dustless. It was completely over. Chapter 1729. The Holy Grail was destroyed, and the dark red liquid that it contained, the evil of this world, invaded the land wantonly, rapidly expanding its territory and occupying the entire land in an instant. The dead hero king and company were instantly covered by the black mud. Apologize. I should be the one apologizing. Saber shook her head and said awkwardly, I didn't choose the right master this time. I didn't expect to leave you with so much trouble in the end. Be it Wei Gong Qi or Yen Feng Qili, I don't wish for them to obtain the Holy Grail. Your actions are exactly what I want. Then your wish should wait for the next Holy Grail war. I will use the Holy Relic to summon you. Dustless's mouth twitched. He originally wanted to say that the so-called Holy Grail war was just a trick to fool people. But after thinking about it, he decided against it. After being defeated by Wei Gong Qi, if he were to tell Saber the truth of the Holy Grail war, she might just give up on herself. Following that, Saber's body turned into starlight and disappeared with the wind. Damn it, damn it, damn it. It's all your fault, you idiot. Yen Feng Qili and Wei Gong Qi pointed at each other's noses and cursed. Both of them coveted the Holy Grail, and now that it was destroyed by Dustless in one move, they pushed the blame to each other. The two of you, an indifferent voice spread out. Yen Feng Qili and Wei Gong Qi, who heard the voice, could not help but shudder. Dustless. Seeing Dustless's figure, Wei Gong Qi and Yen Feng Qili were stunned. The Holy Grail has disappeared, but why are you still alive? This doesn't make sense. Sense. That thing is worthless. I continue to exist because my way of existence is above the Holy Grail. Don't compare me with other heroic spirits. Dustless snorted and looked down on such a rigid concept. Common sense was only effective on ordinary people. Cough, cough, cough. Everything is over, then. Dustless cleared his throat and looked at Yen Feng Qili and Wei Gong Qi. The Fourth Holy Grail War has ended. Then, for world peace, can the two of you die as well? For world peace. You bastard, how dare you say such things? Hearing this, Yen Feng Qili and Wei Gong Qi were both angry and amused. Looking at the huge crack on the ground that was about to be split into two, they cursed Dustless's shamelessness in their hearts. It was all because of Kan Susanu. This bastard almost destroyed Dongmu City, and now he's saying that I'm a threat to world peace. Wei Gong Qi and Yen Feng Qili's faces darkened as they cursed Dustless thousands of times. Bang! Wei Gong Qi clearly did not want to die, so he turned around and launched a sneak attack on Dustless. Bang bang bang. Dustless's head was like a water droplet, splattering in all directions. However, before Wei Gong Qi could rejoice, the wound gradually healed. I wanted to be merciful and give you a quick death. Since you like to die so much, I'll torture you to death slowly. Dustless's scarlet eyes fell on Wei Gong Qi's head as he shouted, Tens Ho. A pitch-black flame appeared out of thin air and landed on Wei Gong Qi's head without any warning. Ah! Kill me if you dare. Wei Gong Qi was rolling on the ground, screaming miserably. His words were filled with endless hatred, but Wu Chen didn't pay attention to him. He just walked lazily to Yen Feng Qili, who was in a daze. As for you, staring at Yen Feng Qili's lifeless eyes, Dustless said, you're luckier than Wei Gong Qi. After all, you're still useful. If you're lucky, you might be able to survive. Lucky. Yen Feng Chili looked at Dustless blankly. Seeing his playful eyes, he felt a chill in his heart. He still hoped that Dustless would give him a quick death. Gulp. The disgusting dark red liquid, the evil of this world, spread out and bubbled like boiling water. It even had visible boiling steam. Fire release, great fireball technique. A huge fireball came out of Dustless's mouth and surged into the evil of this world. It was instantly swallowed, and then a scene that made Yen Feng Chili break down appeared. Boom boom boom. A huge fire rose up and ignited the evil of this world that was slowly moving on the ground. The temperature rose rapidly and the area within a few kilometers turned into a sea of fire in the blink of an eye. You're so evil. You want to burn me alive. You said that I could survive if I was lucky. Lucky my ass. Yen Feng Chili was so angry at Dustless that he couldn't speak properly. He had never been good at talking, but now he was cursing. It was enough to show how frustrated he was. It wasn't that Yen Feng Chili was afraid of death, but he still didn't fully understand the meaning of life. He was just unwilling to die now. You can't say that. Although the chances of survival are slim, it's still better than Wei Gong Chili. Pointing at Wei Gong Chili, who was still struggling in the Amaterasu, Dustless smiled innocently. You're lucky to be burned to death in an instant. Look at the unlucky Wei Gong Chili. I purposely lowered the power of the Amaterasu to the minimum and burned this ungrateful bastard to death bit by bit. Compared to him, Yen Feng Chili, you're so lucky. Lucky? Hearing Wu Chen's bizarre theory, Yen Feng Chili wished he could give him a slap. This fellow looked rather sunny on the surface, but he was extremely sinister and ruthless behind his back. Yen Feng Chili felt that the term smiling tiger was too apt to describe Dustless. On one hand, he could communicate with you in a friendly manner, but on the other hand, he could torture you to death in the most painful way. He was hypocritical and fake. Please don't die. After glancing at Yen Feng and Chili, Dustless strutted away. A Holy Grail war would take about 60 years. However, because the Holy Grail was destroyed this time, the magic power was not released. The next Holy Grail war would only take 10 years. Otherwise, I would have been exhausted to death sooner or later. But then again, although this technique consumes a lot of energy, it's undeniably very convenient. At this moment, Dustless's left eye has turned into Rinnegan Sharingan. And in front of him was a large pile of glittering golden fragments. To be exact, they were actually fragments of the Holy Grail. In fact, these were all transformed from Alice Phil's body. Dustless's current mission was to revive Alice Phil. To be more precise, it was to restore the Holy Grail. Outer Path, Rinnegan Technique. Alice Phil was the vessel of the Holy Grail. From the moment she was killed, she became the carrier of the Holy Grail, used to carry the souls of the heroic spirits. And these fragments of the Holy Grail, in a sense, were Alice Phil's corpse. Buzz buzz buzz, the light of the emerald shrouded the fragments of the Holy Grail. Then, an incredible scene happened. These so-called fragments actually glowed with an indescribable magical power, as if they were endowed with spirituality. They began to understand on their own and began to self-assemble. In just a dozen seconds, all the fragments were gathered and finally turned into a brand new exquisite Holy Grail. Then, under the dumbfounded gaze of Ling and Kuei Inaka, a bright light flashed across the surface of the golden Holy Grail. Then, it slowly turned into a graceful human body. Taking a closer look, it was the dead Alice Phil. Are you kidding me? How can you do such a thing? I heard from Saber that Wei Gong Qixi is dead. Kuai and Ling exclaimed in shock. Their high-spirited tone was even a little sharp. Their eyes were wide open as they stared at Dustless. They stared at him motionlessly. They had already understood what this guy wanted to do. Their breathing immediately became several times heavier. Both of you, lower your voices. I can't concentrate. Dustless's forehead was covered in sweat. The burden of reviving Alice Phil this time was greater than he had imagined. Hum, hum, hum. About 10 seconds later, Sleeping Beauty suddenly opened her eyes. Her mouth let out an unconscious murmur, the kind of soft sound that one would make when they were asleep. It was abnormally vague and very subtle. Didn't I die? About 10 seconds later, Alice Phil's familiar voice drifted into Dustless's ears. Although it sounds a bit weird, I still have to tell you seriously that you have been resurrected by me, Alice Phil. Dustless's gentle and slightly tired voice echoed in Alice Phil's ears. You can even do something like that. Don't tell me your family members are high-ranking officials in heaven. Can you get in through the back door? Alice Phil touched her body. She was both surprised and happy. She even cracked a joke, which was extremely rare. Can you revive Saber and Shurchin? At this moment, Kwai Inaka asked excitedly with a trembling voice. Her crystal eyes were filled with hope and passion. She even wanted to melt Dustless's heart. However, Dustless's face was as cold as ice. Her hopes were destined to be dashed. I'm sorry. I can't do that. The reincarnation of heaven technique can only be used a limited number of times. I can't use it casually. Dustless did not even think about it and directly rejected her. Without a doubt, the reason why Shurchin Inaka could be revived was because Dustless did not like this guy. He was not a good person either. It was better to say goodbye while it was still early. As for Sabra's situation, it was a bit special. The outer path, reincarnation of heaven technique, could revive someone from the dead. However, there was a very important prerequisite. In order to revive someone, the person must first be dead. However, Saber did not actually die. Other than Dustless, Saber was the only person who could not spiritualize. As for why, it was because she was not dead. It was impossible to revive someone who was not dead. Before Saber died, she made a deal with the world's consciousness to obtain the Holy Grail. The price was to become a heroic spirit and work for the world's consciousness. Therefore, the time before Saber's death was fixed. Saber was sent to participate in the Holy Grail War. When Saber obtained the Holy Grail, the world's consciousness fulfilled its promise. Only then would the time before Saber's death begin to flow. Saber would die and become a heroic spirit. As Saber was on the verge of death when she participated in the Holy Grail War, she was still alive. She was not a true heroic spirit. She was only fighting for the Holy Grail as a heroic spirit. Therefore, the outer path, reincarnation of heaven technique, could not revive Saber unless she was completely dead. Only then could Dustless activate the reincarnation of heaven technique to revive Saber. A strange look flashed in her eyes as she took the initiative to approach Dustless. No matter what, Dustless might be despicable and shameless. He might be unscrupulous and use all the people he could to achieve his goals. However, one thing was certain. Dustless would definitely not be as despicable as Wei Gong Kisi. In order to achieve his goals, he would even use his own wife and disregard his own life. Dustless would definitely not use such a despicable method. Wei Gong Kisi used to summon Saber's holy item, Avalon, which is the scabbard of the Excalibur. If you want to summon Saber in the next Holy Grail War, you'll still need it. Dustless's meaning was self-evident. He hoped that Alice Phil would hand over Avalon. Forgive me for not being able to do that. Alice Phil looked like she was in a difficult position as she said bitterly, Avalon is not with me. Before I was captured by Yen Feng Chili, Kisi had already taken it away. That heartless man. Dustless's face stiffened as a haze flashed across his face. He said in a deep voice, "That means Avalon is with Wei Gong Qixi. That kid is really despicable. Was this scene of him being burned by the Tensho purposely for me to see? Avalon could heal and recover all injuries. Even the aging process would be stopped. By releasing the real name, the strongest barrier of protection would be activated. Even interference based on magic would be ineffective. The existence of this relic itself was equivalent to magic. Are you planning to use Avalon to summon Saber in the next Holy Grail War? That's about 60 years later. You're really in love with Saber." Alice Phil rolled her eyes and was speechless. Dustless remained silent. He was too lazy to explain to Alice Phil. Some things could never be explained clearly. Moreover, the more he explained to a woman, the more blurry it would be. Silence was enough. "Let's wait quietly." Staring at the charming scenery outside the window, Dustless muttered to himself. It did not matter even if Avalon was not there. After all, someone would summon Saber for Dustless in the end. It was not bad to wait for 10 years. Time flew by like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Dustless was a 10-tailed beast. His lifespan and time were equivalent to infinity. He had no concept of time. It had passed in the blink of an eye. The biggest feeling he had was that Rin Enosaka and Sakurama had grown up from ignorant kids to young girls. At the same time, it meant that the Fifth Holy Grail War was coming. Time really flies. The next morning, Dustless got out of bed and stared lazily at the rising sun outside the window. 10 years felt like a day. There were no traces of age on his face. He always looked like he was 17 or 18 years old. In the warm bed, there was a white-haired woman curled up. She blinked her eyelashes and had a happy smile on her face. It was Alice Phil. Chapter 1732. After 10 years, Dustless had completely conquered Alice Phil. "Dustless, what are you worried about? It's rare to see you frowning like this." Alice Phil, whose face was flushed red, poked her head out of the quilt and looked at Dustless, who was staring at the void. She stretched her body, and the happiness on her face could not be concealed. Women who had been nourished by men were all like this. Only when they lost something would they know how to cherish it. It was the same for everyone. A heartless betrayal led to the death of Alice Phil. After that, she was resurrected by Dustless with his heaven-defying ability. Alice Phil also obtained a brand new life. She valued Dustless very much, and he became everything in her life. It's nothing. It's just that the Fifth Holy Grail War is about to begin, and I still have no clue. I'm just a little annoyed. Waving his hand, Dustless signaled Alice Phil that there was no need to worry. "Are you also going to participate in the Holy Grail War this time?" Alice Phil hugged Dustless from behind. Her voice was trembling a little. It was obvious that she was worried. After all, the shadow of the previous Holy Grail War still existed. "That's right. Who asked me to promise you?" Dustless gently held Alice Phil's little hand, feeling the warmth between them, and said softly, "If I don't participate in this Holy Grail War, Ilya will face the same ending as you." When the 3 words, "Ilya," were mentioned, Alice Phil's whole body seemed to have been electrocuted. After a while, Alice Phil choked and said, "Thank you, Ilya is innocent. I don't want her to be implicated." "Of course. Leave everything to me." Dustless smiled gently when he heard that. His confident look made people involuntarily feel relieved. Wei Gong Qixi was a scumbag, but Ilya was different. Although the two were related by blood, their personalities were worlds apart. Compared to the despicable Wei Gong Qixi, Ilya was much more naive. Just like what Alice Phil said, Ilya was innocent. She knew nothing about everything. Speaking of which, did you find Saber's holy relic, Avalon? Changing the topic, Alice Field worriedly said, we don't have any other heroic spirit's holy relics at the moment. It seems impossible to summon Sarvant. Avalon. Don't worry about it. Don't forget who I am. I'm a heroic spirit who obtained a body. Dustless smiled mysteriously and said, actually, I've already found Avalon, but I'm keeping it with that little brat for the time being. Alice Phil, I have something to deal with now. You can continue to rest for the time being. Something will happen to you. Alice Phil stared at Dustless in surprise. A hint of awkwardness flashed across her face. Over the years, Dustless spent most of his time doing things that were not suitable for children with her. Of course, there was also Rin's mother, Oki and Osaka. It was just that Rin and Tama Tonjin didn't know about it. The three of them often got together to do those kinds of shameless things. Dustless didn't force Oki and Osaka and Alice Phil. As the saying went, the fusion of yin and yang gave birth to all things. This was the nature of living things. The mutual taking of men and women was in line with the nature of all things. But the only thing that surprised Alice Phil was that Dustless rarely said the words, I have something to deal with, like today. Over the years, he spent most of his time idling around in the Ahrensburg family castle. They talked about love together, talked about life with Oki and Osaka and Alice Phil. When they were bored, they could even tease Rin and Tama Tonjin. Life was very enjoyable. Up to you. Just be careful. Alice Field nodded gently, and then lazily crawled back into her bed. Everything was left to Dustless to handle. He wasn't a scumbag like Kamiya Michiko, who needed a woman's help in everything he did. He even needed his wife to be the bait. At the end of the day, women were meant to be taken care of, not used as props. Creak. Gently pushing open the door, Dustless, who was wearing pajamas, walked out of the bedroom. In the corridor, he happened to pass by a young girl with a slightly gloomy expression. Rin, that's rare. I didn't expect you to be so gloomy. Looking at the dejected girl, Dustless lazily walked over. This person was Rin and Osaka, who had grown up. She was slim and graceful, and her body had inherited her mother's advantage. She had a curvy figure. Ling practically watched Dustless grow up. The relationship between the two people was also self-evident. Seeing Dustless slowly walk over, Rin and Osaka only snorted softly. You. Don't assume that everyone's thoughts are as dirty as yours. Really, how can there be such a weird heroic spirit like you? When Dustless, Oki and Osaka, and Alice Phil were talking about life, it was inevitable that Sakura and Rin would occasionally bump into them. When the two sisters were still young, he could still fool them, but now that they were older, it was impossible to continue fooling them. You're still as arrogant as before. Really, you might not be able to find a boyfriend if you're so ruthless. Dustless sighed compassionately. He was now Rin and Osaka's father in name. I don't need a weird uncle like you to poke your nose into other people's business. Rin and Osaka made a funny face, rudely rebuking Dustless. Hearing this, the corner of Wu Chen's mouth twitched fiercely. A strange old cow who eats young grass. Watch your words. Dustless glared fiercely at Rin. Without further ado, he handed her a special bag. You're having a headache because of this, right? This is a heroic spirit's holy relic. Rin and Osaka was overjoyed. She stared straight at the ancient ruby necklace in Dustless's hand. Its unique ancient aura was faintly decaying. Chapter 1733. Rin and Osaka stared at the holy relic in Dustless's hand. She was just worried about not having a suitable holy relic to summon a heroic spirit, and Dustless was kind enough to give her a pillow. But, Rin and Osaka knew that things were not going well when she heard the sudden creepy laughter. She looked at Dustless's sly smile and knew that things were not as simple as she thought. Do you want it? Dustless waved the ruby necklace in his hand and licked his lips. He smiled innocently and said, "Come, Rin, call me Daddy." "Humph, don't even think about it." Rin Enosaka turned her head away without a second thought. She did not even look at Dustless. TSK, this courage is really admirable." Dustless gave her a thumbs up and then put away the holy relic with a look of pity. He sighed and said, "It seems that some people have forgotten the glory of the Enosaka family. So, it doesn't matter to her whether she participates in this Holy Grail war or not. She has nothing to do with the decline of the Enosaka family." When he mentioned her, Wu Chen deliberately emphasized the word her, and his eyes even looked at Ling. The meaning was self-evident. This family," Rin glared at him and said word by word, "you are a heroic spirit, but you are shameless enough to bully a weak little girl. You are a disgrace to all heroic spirits." "Ha! A weak little girl." Dustless's eyes widened. He looked as if he had just discovered a new continent. He curled his lips and said, "You always interrupt my business. If I don't teach you a lesson, you will become more and more presumptuous. Hurry up and call me Daddy, Rin." Every time Dustless talked about life with Alice Phil or Akui Enosaka, this mischievous little girl would come up with all sorts of strange reasons to send Akui Enosaka away. Dustless could only grit his teeth. Now that he finally had a chance to get back at her, he would not let it go so easily. Definitely not. Rin Enosaka still stubbornly shook her head. This was a matter of principle. No matter what, she would not compromise. "Really? In other words, you don't plan to participate in this Holy Grail war? What a pity. I reckon that Shurchin will not die in peace. Farewell, Ling." Dustless left with a myriad of emotions. Hee, little girl, you still want to fight with me? No matter what, I've lived for hundreds of years. If I can't even deal with a stinky girl like you, where will I put my face? The moment he turned around, Dustless, whose back was facing Rin Tosaka, chuckled in his heart. At the same time, he thought to himself, in 3 seconds, this little girl will definitely lower her head to me. 3, 2, 1. Stop right there. Seeing that Dustless was really going to leave, Rin Enbin finally couldn't take it anymore and walked over angrily. This little girl's stubbornness is beyond words. She insists on being stubborn. Wouldn't it have been better if she had bowed her head earlier? Dustless slandered her in his heart. At the same time, he turned his head with a beautiful smile. I. Thinking about Dustless's shameful request, Rin Enbin's face was as red as an apple. "My dear father." In the end, Rin gritted her teeth and called out with a resolute expression. "That's more like it." Dustless smiled and nodded when he heard this. He decisively acted shamelessly and continued, "Rin, repeat it for me. You have to say, 'My dear father, please give the holy relic to your daughter.' Not a single word missing." "Dustless, how shameless are you?" Rin Enbin's face turned red when she heard this. In her heart, she cursed Dustless for being shameless. Did he have to be so shameless? "You're not going to say it? Then goodbye. I still have things to do, so I'll leave first." Dustless turned around and left again. "You win." Rin Enbin was so angry that she stomped her feet. In the end, she gritted her teeth and blocked Dustless again. Her smile was uglier than crying. "My dear father, hurry up and give the holy relic to your daughter. Children should be so obedient. Only then will they be liked by adults. Take it, Rin." Dustless casually tossed the holy relic to Rin. He did not forget to remind her, "Actually, you don't have to participate in this Holy Grail war. After all, the final victor will still be me. Then I want to participate." Rin Enbin rolled her eyes at Dustless. She glared at him fiercely as if to say that she would not let this matter rest. Kid, you're still a kid. Dustless saw this and shook his head. Then, he directly left and rushed to another location, Miyashiro's house. The heavens have not abandoned me. This Holy Grail War is actually 50 years earlier than the previous one. Only 10 years have passed since the last war. In fact, this Holy Grail War has actually started earlier. In Miyashiro's house, a dispirited man with a face full of stubble was excitedly muttering to himself. His expression was abnormally excited. Even his hands and feet were trembling, very thought-provoking. This person was Miya Keisai. In the original work, he had actually died a few years ago. However, after Dustless's wanton destruction, this plane's development had already gone in the opposite direction from the original work. It was only similar in some areas. You want to continue participating in the Holy Grail War with this appearance of yours? You must be joking. A ghostly voice suddenly rang out without any warning. Could the owner of this voice be? When Miya Keisai heard this, his face turned gloomy. The joy on his face was also swept away. The tone of this nightmare's voice was the man he hated the most and the man he did not want to see the most in his life. He would never forget it even if he turned into ashes. 10 years ago, I destroyed the Holy Grail for today. The magic of the previous Holy Grail War was not released. Therefore, this Holy Grail War is 50 years earlier than the previous one. His bulging eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Gulu gulu. Within Wei Gong Shilang's body, a large area of green veins swam up and down. It was extremely horrifying. Just like Jiantong Yayan, his entire body was filled with a deadly pressure. Hee, the only thing that was not flattering was that in such a solemn atmosphere, a burst of mocking laughter could be heard. Looking up, it was Dustless with a face full of smiles. Do you want to take revenge for your stupid father? Bring it on, little brat. Hooking his finger, Dustless's face was filled with provocation. That arrogant look in his eyes gave people the feeling that he was looking at an insect. It was filled with endless mockery and contempt. If I don't kill you, I'm not human. Wei Gong Shilang was enraged. He pointed to the sky and swore. After that, he picked up the steel pipe on the ground and flew over. Shoo shoo shoo. Although Wei Gong Shilang was just an ordinary human, because Wei Gong Chisi had trained him frequently, his speed had almost reached the limit of a human speed. Shoo shoo shoo. His body was like a gust of wind as he appeared in front of Dustless. The steel pipe was also aimed at Dustless's head. Pang! Who would have expected that Dustless would raise his eyelids and glance at the steel pipe lightly before grabbing it directly? Is that all you've got? So weak that it's pitiful. Wu Chen glanced at the shocked Wei Gong Shirang with pity. He couldn't help but shake his head. This guy really regarded himself as an insignificant character. Seeing that Wei Gong Shirlang was in a daze, Dustless raised his hand and slapped him. Slap, slap, slap. Although it was only 20-30 meters, Dustless had slapped Wei Gong Shirlang dozens of times consecutively. That fellow's head was swollen like a pig's head, and blood flowed out continuously from the corner of his mouth. Pang! Following that, Dustless kicked Wei Gong Shirlang in the air, sending him flying more than 10 meters away. He fell to the ground miserably, and could only mutter weakly. After being beaten up by Dustless, Wei Gong Shirlang was badly injured. His mouth was crooked, and he could not speak properly. It gave people the impression that he was stuttering. Idiot, I still need your help to summon Saber. This time, I'll let you be arrogant for a while. In the future, when you're no longer useful, I'll send you and your father to meet in heaven. Dustless retracted his killing intent. Although he could not wait to kill Wei Gong Shilang and get rid of this annoying cockroach, the current situation did not allow Dustless to act recklessly. There was one thing that could not be denied, and that was that it was not the best time yet. If Wei Gong Shilang was killed, the person who could summon Saber would disappear completely. Live on while you're at death's door. Ignoring the wailing Wei Gong Shilang, Dustless brushed past him. He wanted to use his own ability to summon Saber, but the probability was 0. First of all, it was impossible for a heroic spirit to become a master, and it was even more impossible for him to perform the ritual to summon Sarvant. Although Dustless's abilities were special in some aspects, it did not mean that he was omnipotent. Chapter 1736. Damn it, Wei Gong Shiro's face was ashen as he touched his chin that was kicked crooked. His old face was flushed red with shock and anger. He was so embarrassed. He wanted to stand up again, but his body was so weak that it felt like it was about to fall apart. As soon as he stood up, he fell to the ground. It was impossible for him to muster the strength to fight back against Dustless. This guy is definitely not a normal human. Wei Gong Shiro's face was filled with fear and panic. Even though Wei Gong Qixi had told him about the magician profession, it was completely different from what he had imagined. Especially when it was an existence that was so strong that he could not deal with it. Useless trash. Dustless turned his head and looked at Wei Gong Shiro, who was curled up in the corner like a kitten. He sighed in boredom and retreated lazily. A mere mongrel was too weak. There was no value in exploring it. It was just a pawn. Speaking of which, I wonder how things are going on Rin's side. I wonder if she managed to summon Archer. Dustless lowered his head and pondered. After handing over the holy relic to her, Rin Enbin could not wait any longer and disappeared. Dustless did not know if the ritual to summon Sarvant was successful or not. During this time, Dustless also tried to summon Sarvant, but it ended in failure. Seriously, I can even destroy a planet, but I can't summon a heroic spirit. In the quiet alley, Dustless sighed softly. He looked up at the sky. His bright eyes were a little dazed, and there was a hint of self-mockery. And, suddenly, Dustless turned his head to look at the dark alley behind him. He said softly, "After following me for so long, I think it's time for you to come out. Let me see which heroic spirit you are." Ah, what a headache. You actually discovered my existence. TSK, looks like you're even weirder than I thought. The atmosphere was silent for a while, and then suddenly there was a shocked voice. When I heard that Master wanted me to assassinate a human, I felt that my dignity was being insulted. But I didn't expect you to discover me. You're worthy of being killed by me. I'm very confident in my concealment skills, but you discovered me. This is something that humans can't do. A man in a suit similar to the European Middle Ages came out from the left side of the alley, holding a blood-red spear in his hand. His gloomy eyes fell on Dustless, full of shock. To be honest, he was really shocked that a human had discovered his tracks. This outfit, and that gun. You must be a Lancer, right? After a few seconds of silence, Dustless revealed Lancer's identity. At the same time, he could not help but feel a headache in his heart. He had no part in the Fifth Holy Grail War, but he was dragged into it by some random person. He felt really depressed and wronged. After all, Dustless's current identity was neither master nor servant. To put it bluntly, he was just an unemployed vagrant. Who sent you here? Dustless asked in surprise. Could it be Yen Feng, Qi Li? Really, the luck of these two brats was better than the other. It's fine that Wei Gong Qixi is still alive, but Yen Feng Qi Li is still alive too. TSK, who knows? I'm not interested in knowing Master's name. Lancer held his spear with both hands and stared at Dustless with burning eyes. He did not hide his desire to fight at all. Bring it on. Dustless curled his finger and smiled innocently. Don't you plan to use a weapon? Lancer frowned and looked at Dustless, who was barehanded. He was rather unhappy and even a little angry. He thought to himself, what does this brat mean? Why doesn't he use a weapon? Is he looking down on me? Hee. The corner of Dustless's mouth curled up slightly. His bright eyes saw through Lancer's inner thoughts. You guessed right, I look down on trash like you. Human, you're looking for death. Lancer was infuriated when he heard Wu Chen's words. A ruthless glint flashed across his eyes. Immediately, he turned into an afterimage and thrust the spear in his hand at Wu Chen's eyes. Lancer was particularly annoyed by the look of contempt in Dustless' eyes. Bang bang bang. The light of the spear pierced through Dustless's head. The entire tip of the spear was inserted into Dustless's eyes. His skull was destroyed. Even the gods would not be able to save him, and he would die without a doubt. The touch doesn't feel right. Lancer's face froze. He subconsciously pulled out the spear tip. There was a huge hole in Dustless's eyes, but it recovered in less than a second. Is that all? Staring at the shocked Lancer, Dustless did not hold back. You want to shake me with such a crude physical attack? You overestimate your ability, Lancer. Now. It's my turn to fight back. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Activating the ability of the flash fruit, Dustless's body flashed and crossed through layers of space. He instantly appeared behind Lancer. On the other hand, this guy was still looking left and right. He did not notice Dustless's existence behind him. Although heroic spirits were far stronger than humans, they were not invincible. For example, the speed of light. Lancer could not rely on his naked eyes to capture Dustless's tracks. Little did he know that when Dustless and Lancer were fighting, two figures were watching the changes with interest. Where did that guy's heroic spirit come from? It seems like the outcome is decided in an instant. Should we launch a sneak attack, Master? Chapter 1737. Kill him. How confident are you? The girl who was called Master asked. Her eyes were filled with hope. She hoped that her hero spirit could kill Dustless. How confident? The male hero spirit fell silent. His voice was filled with ripples. He shook his head and pondered for a few seconds. A sneak attack is still possible. If it's a head-on battle, I'm afraid 10 of me won't be his match. Archer, you're not purposely going easy on him, are you? The girl with delicate features pouted. She was annoyed by Archer's answer. 10 of you won't be his match. How are you going to help me get the Holy Grail? Don't say such hurtful words in the future. I'll doubt your ability, Archer. The girl with the ponytail put her hands on her hips and looked at Archer arrogantly. Ling, I'm just telling the truth. If that guy can really use that kind of insane speed, I think none of the hero spirits will be his match in close combat. Don't forget, I'm an archer. Close combat isn't my forte. Archer said honestly. He looked at Dustless with fear. Is that so? Ling Anbin fell silent. He then nodded and said, but Dustless isn't master or servant. So we don't have to worry. In fact, we're allies. Allies? The red-clothed, white-haired archer was stunned. He said in surprise, if he's not master or servant, why is he our ally? Is he your relative? Ling? No, Dustless is the winner of the last Holy Grail War. Ling Anbin shook his head. He then took the initiative to walk toward Dustless. Lightspeed kick. The flash of a foot landed on Lancer's body. Lancer, who didn't even have time to react, was sent flying like a cannonball. Boom! 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 A blazing fireball rose into the air, and Lancer's entire body was pulled into the flames. There was a special smell in the air. It was the smell of Lancer being cooked. You overestimate yourself, how dare you ambush me? Dustless sneered at Fireball. Go home and train for another 8 to 10 years. You're too weak, Lancer. However, at the same time, a sudden change occurred. Swish! Swish! Dustless was stunned for a moment when he heard a sharp sound of something breaking through the air behind him. He turned around and asked in surprise, "Is this a red gem? Could it be Ling? Did he summon Archer?" But... Ling, you're still as laughably naive as ever. Staring at the incoming gem, Dustless sneered indifferently. His pupils widened slightly, and the black flames instantly eroded and annihilated the gem. Tens Ho! In the blink of an eye, the gemstone was engulfed by the sea of fire. The endless black flames devoured the surface of the ground and spread towards Archer at a terrifying speed. This kind of fire can't be extinguished. Archer was sweating profusely. He stared at the evil nightmare fire and could not help but have goosebumps. He looked at Dustless's eyes. That terrifying silence was like an abyss. It made one's scalp tingle, and it was very uncomfortable to breathe. Chapter 1738. Both Archer and Rin Enbin were confused. They didn't know what Dustless was talking about, but they understood the basic meaning. This was a very special technique. As long as the user left some kind of energy mark on the enemy, they wouldn't be able to escape from the nightmare that Dustless had created for them. What a despicable person. You let him go on purpose, didn't you? When he returns to Master, he will activate the technique called Flying Thunder God Sorcerer. Rin Enbin snorted disapprovingly. He cursed Dustless for being so cunning. Despicable. Ling, you'd better remember this well. The people who live the longest in the world are usually the despicable ones. They are the ones who are good at scheming. Dustless rolled his eyes as he lectured Rin. Let's go back for now. The Flying Thunder God Sorcerer can't be eliminated anyway. We can find the right time to kill that kid. In the Ahrensburg family's castle. Dustless and Rin walked back side by side. As for Archer, he was tricked by Dustless into attacking Wei Gong Shiro. There was no other reason than to help Wei Gong Shiro become master. Archer didn't like Dustless's order. After all, his master was Rin Enbin. However, after thinking about it, he finally agreed with Dustless's plan. Compared to the cunning Dustless, Rin was still too naive. Strange, Dustless and Rin stopped in front of the Ahrensburg family's castle. The barrier that was set up in the past was broken. Rin reached out to touch the air and found that he could easily invade the barrier. The barrier that covered the Ahrensburg family used to have a thin layer. Damn it! Although that barrier was set up a long time ago, it's impossible for ordinary people to break it. Only one kind of person can do this. Speaking up to here, Rin Enbin's expression suddenly became anxious, and he quickly ran towards the luxurious villa. Rin, although it's undeniable that someone broke in, there's no need to worry. They don't have any bad intentions. A calm and composed voice rang out. Dustless lazily followed up and said, "You still can't tell. Other than the destruction of the barrier around the building, there are no other signs of fighting." After Dustless's reminder, Rin Enbin's gaze shifted slightly. He found that it was just as Dustless had said. Other than the broken barrier, the buildings and lush green grass were all brand new. There were no traces of broken walls or glass shards. There was not even the slightest sign of battle. After careful consideration, the other party was indeed not the type to come with ill intentions. Let's go in and take a look. Seeing Rin Enbin's worried expression, Dustless pulled her into the castle. Sigh, sigh, sigh. You two haven't come to see me for so many years. It's very hard for me to live alone. This is wrong. You have to compensate me for my loss. A young girl's coquettish voice sounded from Alice Phil's room. The soft and ethereal voice was very pleasant to the ears. Although it sounded barbaric and unreasonable, the young girl's tone was unusually soft and gentle. It was hard to dislike her. Could it be that she came? Dustless, who was walking to Alice Phil's room, suddenly stopped. This soft voice and slightly arrogant tone could only lead to one person. It must be her. Dustless's head skimmed through the gap in the door. A young girl with long white hair came into view. It was exactly as he had guessed. As expected, Ilya came uninvited. No wonder she could tear apart the barrier. With Berserker's ability, this is more than enough. Dustless instantly understood. He subconsciously looked at Rin Enbin, hoping that she would leave for a moment. However, she seemed to have deliberately broken into the door. Where did this thief come from? How dare you break into my house? Rin Enbin displayed her chilly side and reprimanded loudly with her hands on her hips. After all, her mother, Kue Enbin, also lived in this castle, so it was normal for Rin to be angry. However, it was worth mentioning that the person she provoked this time wasn't a good person either. Rin, your temper has gotten worse. The young girl, who was as delicate as a porcelain doll, wasn't afraid at all. She looked into Rin's eyes and snorted. Your temper has gotten worse, but your strength is still average. Be careful, I will let Berserker teach you a lesson even if you are mother's friend. An uninvited guest like you dares to spout such arrogant words. Rin's anger accumulated in his heart. It was fine if Ilya didn't apologize, but now, she even wanted to teach him a lesson. If he could tolerate it, what else could he tolerate? Archer. Berserker. The two of them didn't like each other and instantly attacked. Rin Enbin was the most exaggerated. He directly used a command spell to order Archer to rush over as reinforcements. These two really can't tolerate each other. Dustless had a headache. In the original work, the relationship between Rin Enbin and Ilya was very bad. Dustless wanted to persuade the two of them, but the two of them looked at him with indignant gazes. Who are you helping? These three simple words made it difficult for Dustless to resist. After all, the two of them were related to Dustless in countless ways. Especially their mothers, who had already become one of them. Rin, put down your dagger. And Ilya, throw away the stool in your hand. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.